Are you called to ministry? I know that you want to serve God and you also want to make an impact. Maybe you've dreamed about preaching to thousands or being a missionary on a foreign country. Maybe you were asked to be a leader in your youth group and it feels really, really good, but does that mean that you were called? How can we know? Today I want to talk to you about a call to ministry. Our church has a theological statement that reads, "We believe in a divinely called and scripturally ordained ministry." The first part of that statement tells us that ministers need to be called by God. Only God can call someone to ministry. You can't call yourself, your parents can't call you, not even your church. Only God can call. The second part of that statement tells us that every minister needs to have a scriptural ordination. That's the process of preparation and also verification. See, it's true that only God can call, but it's also true that God's call has to be evident by others and verified by the church. The Bible teaches us that every Christian is called to serve the Lord, whether they are a preacher or have some other job. But that's the general call. But the Bible also teaches that God has a special call for some people to devote themselves to leadership and to service. There is a distinction between everyone's a minister and I'm called to be a minister. It's a frequent theme through Scripture. Paul routinely describes himself as called to be an apostle or separated to the gospel of God. Our New Testament would be much shorter if we just erased all the examples of people who left their fishing boats or other jobs because they felt that call to devote themselves to spiritual leadership and service. But how do you know if you are called? There are 5 C's I want you to remember. The first one is that God has to communicate it to you. God speaks to us through many ways, in prayer and dreams, through feelings and, other things. Some people experience a ministry call very suddenly and obviously. Some people sense it gradually over time, but God speaks to us in different ways. But it doesn't matter whether your calling is a common or unique. What matters is that you know it was God. The second thing your calling needs to have is it needs to be confirmed by others, probably by your parents or by your pastor and by other leaders. If God really has called you, then others will probably see it too. But you need to be patient when you talk with them about it at first. They may not see it right away, but give them time, and they will. The third thing is that you need to pass the character test. Ministers live to a higher standard. It's true with any type of leadership, but especially for the church leaders. That doesn't mean that they are perfect, but ministers need to have better character than the average person. Fourth is that you need to have compassion. Ministers is a people job. You have to love people. Some people are easier to love than others. Some can be demanding and ungrateful and annoying and hard to love, but we are called to love everyone. Ministers need to have durable love for people. If you don't love people, you won't last long in ministry. Fifth, you need to be competent in ministry skills. There's lots of different types of ministries that require different skills, but most ministers require a minimal ability to public speak, counseling with people, and other leadership organizational stuff. You may not have these abilities right now, which is okay. These are things that can be learned and developed, but eventually you will need them. You need to know that ministry is a journey with uncertain destination. Most ministers don't know at the start where God will ultimately take them. Many ministers start out of doing a type of ministry and later transition to another type of ministry, and that's okay. Because God leads us step by step as we grow and we develop. Just know that God has called you to do what you need to do now, but it may not be the ultimate destination later. At this point, you may not be certain about your call, and that's okay. It's okay to explore your calling. God will give you green lights and red lights if you start to get off track. And so if you think that you might be called, this is what you should probably do. The first thing is you should pray and ask God to communicate it to you. You should talk to your parents and your pastor and ask for a confirmation. You should think about your character and ask yourself, do I have the character that is needed of a minister? Fourth, I think you need to think about your relationships and ask yourself, am I compassionate? Do I love people enough to devote myself to ministry? And fifth, Evaluate your abilities. Am I competent in ministry skills? Can I learn the skills that I need where I lack? In a future lesson, we'll be talking about scriptural ordination process as it relates to your ultimate validation of your calling. But right now, I just challenge you to go through those 5 C's and really ask yourself, God, make your calling evident in my life.